Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of That's Ruddy Mysterious, a podcast of short tales about true mysteries. What created the Potomsky Crater? Who was involved in the 1963 Great Train Robbery? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts and references for all episodes can be found at that'sruddymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about Gef the Mongoose. James and Margaret Irving moved to Dorlish Cashen, also known as Cashen's Gap, in 1917. Cashen's Gap is a farmhouse on the Isle of Man. It's located just outside the village of Dalby. It is an ancient farmstead on a supposedly fairy-filled island. This is where Gef appeared in 1931. Soon after moving to Cashen's Gap, the Irving's daughter Voirrey was born. The first few years of Voirrey's life were uneventful, but in 1931, the family began seeing a mongoose on the farm outside the house. Before long, the mongoose began appearing inside the house. At this time, the family also began hearing tapping sounds and then a growl coming from the attic. The Irvings went to investigate but found nothing. Eventually, the growls turned into gurgling sounds and then began sounding like a baby learning to talk. Some believed Gef to be a ghost returning in the form of a mongoose. In September of 1931, a reporter said of Gef and the Irvings, "The people who claim it was the voice of the strange weasel seemed sane, honest, and responsible folk, and not likely to indulge in a difficult, long, drawn-out, and unprofitable practical joke to make themselves the talk of the world." What was Gef? Was he really a ghost? Once Gef began sounding like a baby learning to talk, James Irving decided to teach him how to speak. James would say words, and Gef would parrot them back to James. This is how their relationship began, and how Gef was able to tell the Irvings his name. In January of 1932, another journalist visited the Irving family. The journalist was from the Manchester Daily Dispatch. He described James Irving as a keen, vigorous, young-looking man. He told James that he had come to ask about the haunting. James told the reporter, "There are no spooks here. Nothing has happened that's supernatural. I am being worried to death by crowds of people visiting the place. Come in, I will tell you all about it." James continued that they'd first seen Gef in October. He described the creature as resembling a stoat, a ferret, or a weasel. James said that Gef was yellowish and about 9 to 12 inches long. James said Gef was thin and could easily get into the house. He said that Gef appeared in the house occasionally and that he had attempted to catch Gef, who he referred to as Jack. In November, the Irvings first heard Jack's voice singing sentences of songs and hymns. Sometime after this interview, Gef told James that his name was Gef, not Jack. In 1933, cousins Harry Hall and Will Cubman talked to Gef but did not see him. They played a game with Gef where Gef would guess heads or tails before the cousins flipped a coin. He played catch with them with a rubber ball through a hole in the attic ceiling. Then Gef began spitting at the boys and threatening them. The cousins determined that Gef was not a normal boy. In a 1934 letter, James Irving said that Gef had told him, "For years I could understand all that was said. I tried to talk, but couldn't until you taught me." In 1935, James Irving sent some of Gef's hair to Harry Price. Supposedly, Gef had plucked them from his tail. Price sent the samples to F. Martin Duncan from the Zoological Society. Duncan tested the hairs and determined they did not come from a mongoose. He believed the samples probably came from a longish-haired dog. Harry Price later visited the family and discovered that they had a sheepdog with identical fur. James also sent imprints of Jeff's paws and teeth to Price, who noted a large difference between the size of Jeff's front and rear paws. The Zoological Society said that no animal existed that had such a big difference in paw size. They also didn't find any of the normal skin folds you'd see in a paw print. The society believed that the family had used sticks to make the imprints. They called Jeff a hoax. In the same year, Harry Price visited the Irving family. He believed Jeff was a hoax, but not one for monetary gain. The Irvings had refused an offer to purchase Jeff's picture and another to purchase the rights to Jeff's story. In a private letter that Price wrote to a reader, he said that he believed the family must be mixed up, but that there was still a question as to their motive for making Jeff up. He said the motive was not to bring people to Cashen's Gap because the Irvings had tried very hard to keep people away. He concluded, "The motive for the imposture lies much deeper than mere publicity, and that is what makes the case so interesting." Nandor Fodor was a psychoanalyst, parapsychologist, and journalist who specialized in paranormal studies. In February of 1937, he went to Cashen's Gap to investigate the claims about Jeff. Fodor stayed with the Irving family for a week. Fodor wanted to interview Jeff, but the mongoose refused to speak to him. Fodor did interview the Irving family, especially James, repeatedly. In 1951, Fodor wrote the book Haunted People, Story of the Poltergeist Down the Centuries, in which he included the story of Gef the Mongoose. Fodor was something of a skeptic and believed that many hauntings were nothing more than a psychic manifestation created out of boredom. In the case of Jeff, Fodor concluded that he was projected from James's mind out of boredom. In 1970, a journalist for Fate magazine, Walter McGraw, interviewed Vori Irving. She said that Jeff was not a hoax. She didn't think fondly of Jeff. She said that he made her meet people that she didn't want to meet, who called her mental or said she was a ventriloquist throwing her voice to make people believe they were hearing Jeff. She said she was not a good ventriloquist, and if she were, she would be making much better money than she was. When McGraw asked her if Jeff was a mongoose, she said she didn't know and described him as a small animal between 9 and 12 inches long. She said Jeff spoke to them through the wainscoting. When McGraw asked Vori outright if Jeff was a hoax, she insisted he was not. She said, "Yes, there was a little animal who talked and did all those other things. He said he was a mongoose and said we should call him Jeff, but I do wish he had let us alone." In 2017, librarian Christopher Joseph wrote the book Jeff, the Strange Tale of an Extra Special Talking Mongoose. In the book, Joseph compared Jeff to a Victorian music hall comedian. Joseph said that Jeff played pranks and made outspoken, irreverent comments, and that this was a large part of Jeff's enduring appeal. Joseph wrote that Jeff repeatedly mocked the Irvings, compared James to a Dickens character, or saying that James' head resembled an onion. Joseph also said that Jeff would also be mean to Margaret while she was undressing for bed. He would call out the names of the clothing items she was removing as she removed them. Joseph concluded, "The lack of resolution adds to the case's appeal," adding, "When I was writing my book, I was terrified I might unearth Rory's secret diary in which she confessed to having faked the whole thing. Thankfully, he never did." Alan Murdy is a lawyer with experience investigating the paranormal. He is chairman of the Ghost Club. He said that Nandor Fodor didn't believe that poltergeists were invisible spirits of the dead. Instead, Fodor believed that they were the psychic manifestations of a person's subconscious. Murdy said that Fodor believed living people could create real hauntings with just their thoughts. These hauntings could be powerful enough to throw or levitate objects. Some people believe that Fodor needed proof of his theories and that Jeff provided that proof. There is no concrete evidence that Gef the Mongoose ever existed, despite the existence of some photographs. James Irving said that Gef did not like to be photographed, but that he agreed to be at Margaret's insistence. James said that Gef only obeyed Margaret. Some say one of the photographs was of a couple of fox stoles, but photos searched the house of the Irvings' absence and found no stoles. Some people also say that the other photographs are actually pictures of a log of wood or a mass of vegetation. Some local people insist Gef was a hoax. Harry Price had received some letters saying that poor old Irving had been hoodwinked by his wife and daughter. A childhood friend of Vorey's said that Vorey was a gifted ventriloquist, but some experts say that the ability to throw the voice is a myth. Gef was also heard speaking at least twice when Vorey was not present. Fodor initially believed that Gef was a talking animal, but later said that he was actually a split-off part of James's personality. After James Irving purchased Cashen's Gap, he had some work done before moving in. The workers refused to stay the night. However, the next owner of Cashen's Gap said that they never saw nor heard Gef. The farmhouse has since been demolished. Who or what was Gef the Mongoose? Was he really a ghost or a poltergeist? Was he a talking mongoose? Was he a manifestation of James Irving's personality, or was he a hoax entirely? What do you think? Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ruddy Mysterious. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and follow That's Ruddy Mysterious to be updated about new episodes. Tune in next Tuesday for another thought-provoking tale.